Thanks, Heidi. Yes, I'm Chief Executive for HESA. Just anyone who doesn't know what HESA is, don't feel embarrassed, it's good. Put your hand up. You all know what HESA is. Fantastic. That saves time. I don't have to explain. Higher Education Statistics Agency. And I'm going to talk to you, winds of change. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take us on an epic voyage, a voyage of discovery, because I've broken all the rules. I haven't got a slide that tells you in detail what I'm going to talk about. We're going to discover it together. And when I said epic, I mean epic. And thank you, Colin, about talking about we're going to change the orbit of planets. That wasn't actually what this slide was going to depict, but, you know, why not? Because by the time we get to the end, that's actually what I'd like us to feel we can do. What this is about is really saying to you, out there, there is a higher education information landscape. And actually, we find we don't know a huge amount about it. It really is quite alien to us if you look at it across its breadth. In the last year or so, we've discovered that there are over 500 demands for data made to your institutions in higher education by over 90 different organisations. Until about a year or so ago, when we asked you all and asked others, we really didn't know that. And we're going to need to know more to take us forward, and that is where we are going to have to spend some money, be adventurous, be innovative, and really actually move where no other man has trodden before to actually find out how we can improve this information landscape. So, new horizons. And I'm very grateful to EMA actually for laying out in front of us this notion of the different ages. I mean, I would say that IT and technology has only just really come out of the primeval sea. And you explained to us that we're moving to the conceptual age. So this is my illustration of the information age, which is where I think we are. And even worse, from my perspective, that diplodocus or diplodocus, press your voting buttons now, is actually HESA. Because many of you will be very aware that the way that we collect data is student arrives, enrolls or registers. Here's a little problem with language, which we meet over and over again. Enrolls or registers, and that is, say, September, October. The data is collected in one massive and hard process, sort of September through October, November, following. That's the end of that academic year, and then we make it available to you in January. So that's 15 months after that student has arrived. And meanwhile, what's happening? You know those little sort of dinosaurs that run around? They're probably carnivorous, whereas we are benign. And they run around, and they're called surveys, and they're in and out of your institutions collecting the data because, you know, no one knows until 15 months later what's been going on. And I think my real concern, and the concern of others who use HESA data, is quite frankly, on that evolutionary path, we're becoming rightly extinct. So what are we going to do about it? Well, interestingly, you will recall that in the HE white paper of some years ago now, we have to admit, there was this requirement that HESA, with HEFCE, one or two others, actually seriously looked at that information landscape, and that we redesigned the higher education information landscape. And out of that was born HEDIIP. Right, another vote. Who does not know what HEDIIP is? Right. That's all right. I can tell you. That's interesting. Okay, so I'll spell it out and it might start to mean sense. Higher education, data and information improvement programme, HEDIIP. Okay? So HEDIIP was set up as a programme of work that would actually start to explore, define and then to improve that wide information landscape. So I'm not just talking about your internal systems and your internal data, but that's really key. I'm talking about the data that is collected for around health, so HEE and all those levies, if you understand that terminology. I'm talking about the PSRBs, so those professional statutory regulatory bodies that come in and ask for data all over your institutions. And I'm talking about the way we do it. I'm talking about data standards. So this lost, confused, unsure, that's how it felt like at the start of that HEDIIP programme when it was launched. Andy Yule has been heading it up, spoken to many, many of your organisations. There's a big advisory group that some of your institutions are involved in. And basically, they've gone forward, first of all, to look at some of the sort of building blocks of that. So they're looking, for example, at how we introduce the unique learner number, the ULN. Oh, I feel I have to do a vote on everything. Who knows what the ULN is? Way, okay. So unique learner number, it's coming in. There's always been a field in HESA waiting for it. It's coming through the school system. It's in the FE system, but we don't use it. We don't use it because there are a lot of students without it, and we would have to start to actually, which we can do, give students a unique learner number. Advantage, we can track students. Your WP, you can look at where the students came from, which schools, what the interventions have affected and where they come through into institutions. We can track them through from one institution when they go on to do postgraduate in another, and it helps us to link data, which is becoming more and more important. That's ULN. JACs, subject codes, we're reviewing that through this programme. So there's going to be not that historic hierarchical approach to subject coding. It's going to be flat and it's going to be dynamic, and you're going to be able to build groups, etc., etc. So some of these building blocks are really seriously being looked at by HEDIIP. But importantly, they also have reached a point where they're looking strategically. And the project that's about to report is around a new higher information landscape, higher education information landscape. And what they are producing is a blueprint that's going to pick up some of those building blocks, but say, where do we have to go and how do we have to move on to achieve a more rational information landscape, where we haven't got these 500 different data collections, where we can get the data, share it, use it, link it, get it out there. And I have to say, gratifyingly, in many ways, the blueprint actually looks something like this. So you can see why I say gratifyingly, because at the centre is something called HESA Transformed. And after a lot of discussion, consultation, maybe not with you personally, directly, but certainly across your institutions, there has emerged this sense that actually by making some really strategic changes to the way HESA works, then there are opportunities for, as I say, rationalising that landscape. And I thought it was very interesting that yesterday, I'm sorry I wasn't here, but I picked up quite a lot of feedback, you know, the talk that Mary gave. I mean, Mary, UCAS are very involved in this, the SLC have been involved, others. So UCAS are really the front end of this, aren't they? That's where that original information, and this is largely focused on students, where that original information about the students comes into the system. So we've really got to sort of get that right, and it's really encouraging that UCAS is seriously thinking about how that's going to work. So it comes into your institutions, it moves into HESA. But the opportunity lies particularly in that PSRB area, which is one area of duplication and burden. The opportunity of integrating closely with loans, with student finance, SLC, is actually not likely in the immediate future because they are really having to concentrate on their business at the moment. But they are in scope, shall we say. Visas is hard as well. I know that data exchange could be possible. I sort of know we've worked through UCISA to try and improve that relationship. So that's all there, ready and waiting. But the question is, what is HESA Transformed all about? Okay, so this is it. Actually, if you're worried about that, don't be. I mean, that could really work for us, because basically what that's about is actually moving data around our landscape, moving data in a way where we haven't got bottlenecks, where we haven't got traffic jams, where we can get it from one place to another, being able to share that map and make it happen, make it efficient. And so we, HESA, and when I say we, I have to admit, I've got two of my staff in the group here. They can pretend they don't know me, or you can go and ask them questions when you need or want to. They're sitting over there. That's all right. We have said to those that fund us, which are basically you, the institutions, through a lot of discussion in a very short time scale, to those that fund you, that's the funding councils, we've said we need to really up our game here. We need to invest to change. And as from January, we've had a group helping us, I have to say KPMG, but a group helping us to actually start to talk to you out there, which has been going on, not you personally possibly, but your staff and others and groups, about how we could change to respond to that HESA Transformed, what we need to do. And this gives you a sense of where we've got to in that exercise. So we're calling it change to our approach to the collection of higher education data. And you can work out why, can't you? Because it most conveniently spells cached. And from now onwards, HESA cached is how I will refer to this piece of work. And what we've tried to do in the first place is identify what it is that will be of value to you and to all of us out there, because we service a huge group of potential stakeholders, information users, as well as a really important group of information providers. I hope you can read these. Is it big enough? I'm just going to turn around and look. Yep, okay. So first of all, one of the key barriers to these multiple demands for data was that notion that HESA data wasn't going to be there for 15 months. And actually a lot of organisations need it sooner, quicker, by December or whenever, because their funding is based on it. Plus, we just want to know, all of us want to know, we want to know what's going on in the sector, and we're very dependent on extrapolating from the UCAS data, whereas actually, as you all know, the students who actually turn up and are in your universities are only a proportion of those who apply to UCAS. So it's about timely data, huge importance, reducing the burden. How are we going to do that? Improved value for money. If you're going to make the effort to supply data, what is the return on that? What is the value of that data out there to you and to others? And then there's the question of quality. HESA is actually really, really important in that quest for quality. It matters because data is then comparable and we know what we're talking about, but we've got to get it fit for purpose. We can't overdo quality, we can't underbake quality. And then there's these responses to that HEDIIP new landscape, and part of that is actually about data governance. So in detail, I haven't got time to talk it through in intimate detail, but it's important that you understand data is the collection in year, okay? Get ready for it. So we're going to start coming in and exploring with you how we collect data in year. And then we're going to look at streamlining that process. A lot of you are actually engaged at the moment in improving your internal systems. How can we match and work with that? How can we streamline that? Plus, very key and frightening is actually the prospect that we are really determined to try and achieve data standards that we can share across that landscape. And the HEDIIP programme is starting on that quest. So common standards. Then value for money is about getting it out there, using it, making sure that people know and can and have the tools to do that. And then we move on to fit for purpose, I've talked about, really review that quality assurance process. And there's a very important piece of work that HEDIIP is also engaged in, which is about capability. I don't know if any of you have looked at the HEDIIP website. I sort of get the sense not, but I suggest you do, because there's a piece of work around institutional capability, which is actually key to making this work as a partnership between us. So that's the plan. Where are we with that? Well, actually, we're at this phase 1, which is about business case. And the reason? Because HESA does not have the wealth, the riches, to actually be able to fund this ourselves. So we're out there looking for investment. We're lean and mean, partly because you pay for us. That's no criticism, it's how it should be. And so we are developing a business case. It has to fit with the sort of funding regime and timescale of the funding councils, which means it has to be completed in draft by the end of March. So it's a rapid piece of work. And this is the website. That will be revealed very soon now. And what it will reveal is, in that business case, we're going for 3 options, the as-is, and then 2 options which range around that really important change to the way in which we will collect and deliver data. And that is in year and in response to the need for it. So let's imagine we tie together 15 of those demands for data that are coming into your organisation and satisfy them with a delivery at the beginning of December. And the ITT is an example already where we deliver specific data in October for teachers, teacher training. So we try and agree with you a programme of deliveries that will actually work to reduce that burden and give you data as and when it's available and to a standard that you can actually use for your business processes. So those are the options, and we'll be talking more about those, and they'll be on the website, and we'll come and talk to you about them as soon as we know we can go forward with this. So that is the cached programme, and watch that space, watch that website, and we'll be in touch. And so I'm just going to feature now a few the notions of what is this information all about. You know, why do we have it? Well, one of the things that the white paper was very clear about was that we need more in the way of information to support students in their choice of where they go to university. There's still a focus on that. It's moving to outcomes around employability and sadly, in some people's view, focusing on salaries, but also on you know, advantages and which universities will suit you. And key to that was in the key information set. We all struggled, but it's there now. And I put this slide up just to point out one aspect of that. You will be aware that actually that is one data set that we particularly make available as open data, open license, open data. This is a sort of trend, so we're really watching the open data expectations. One of the keys to that is that it is managed and available with support. And what we're finding, 10,000 downloads, but the vast majority of them come back to us and say, actually, we can't make sense of this, so please help us. So that's sort of one of the things that we can try and do, is make sense of the data that we put out there. So this is the sort of pause where I can say, really what we're trying to work out is what's going to be needed for that future higher education landscape. Where are we going? What's the key features of it? How can we actually respond to that? One of the things is that the sector is changing, so we collect data now from alternative providers. Sorry to call you that if you're in the room. Obviously we collect data from the traditional, but we're aiming to collect higher education information wherever it is for a larger range of stakeholders, and we just need to be able to respond more rapidly to policy and policy change, because it happens, and we need to set up systems that can actually make it more straightforward rather than hard. And one of the things that we're seeing is a dramatic increase in interest in our data. So we have more and more and more. Very often it will be your institution, so 40% over of the requests that come into our information services are from higher education institutions. And the sort of information that a lot of people are looking for now is that market research data. In fact, we've started publishing subject benchmark reports where you can sort of actually look at, because a lot of people are actually looking at their portfolios, want to get a sense of where to take them. And so these reports are actually becoming quite helpful, because it saves you, particularly smaller institutions that haven't got the resource, the effort and time in actually building them. So that's, we're really seeing that those institutions that want to succeed are realising the importance of intelligence and data. It's almost apparent to us when we look at how the league tables emerge, how the institutions that are pushing their way up are actually very often the real data-savvy institutions. So without doubt, it's going on out there. And then there's something else about our data. There's something more profound and strategic about it. A lot of people perhaps don't appreciate the wealth of intelligence that's in there. And I just put this up because I decided to be a bit more topical and just give you a view. So International Women's Day, not long past. Just look at that and think about it. And think about the fact that we're in education for the long game. Higher education. That's one of the amazing things about education. We're educating largely the next generation and generations to follow. And talk about that during the lightning strike, which incidentally I thought was going to be the Q&A and directed straight at me, and I thought, I am going to be the highest, and I am going to... so I'm relieved that it's amongst yourselves. But I just think that's fascinating. Anyway, moving on. Another topical, so Science Week, it's happening, or just about. And have a look at those science subjects. OK, another poll. How many people in the room took a degree of one sort or another in computer science? OK. Are you worried about what you see there? It is the only science subject that has actually declined in the last 10 years. What's going on? Does it matter? Should we worry? It does matter, and I mean, very interestingly, computer science is now being introduced into schools, and we'll see the effect it has. And I will just say, it's across, I mean, the government has been hugely promoting STEM, and they should be pleased, and we should be pleased to notice that in the last 10 years, actually, those STEM subjects have increased by over 30% of all qualifications. And last year, about 27% of all qualifications were in those science subjects. By the way, Heidi, you're going to shout at me, aren't you, at the right moment? You're watching the time. No clocks. Why no clocks? Just one there. Fine. Oh, there's a lovely little clock. Sorry, everyone. I just didn't see it. Thank you so much. I'm fine. Thank you, UCISA. It has to be Chris. Thank you. I hope that those online out there can appreciate. This is a sort of sense of where the data that you supply really drives big policy issues and really helps us to plan and look and think strategically about what it is we're doing, not just how and, how the information. So the next one I'm putting up here is just a sense of the importance really of appreciating the contribution of higher education into our economy. And you will be aware, it was the budget yesterday, that the sort of data that you provide as institutions that comes through HESA that can go out into making and encouraging some really positive decisions about funding, and the importance of that data when it comes to the major reviews of the investment in higher education. So this is encouraging. Look at it. Patents, they're going up. Your institutions, our institutions, are really beginning to move up in actually that sort of involvement. And this comes from the HESA, Higher Education, Business and Community Interaction Survey that people might complain about, but it has got a real value when it comes to actually showing the achievements of higher education. So the data is, while it's hugely important that you have it in many different guises out there, accessible and available around your institution and where you're taking it, obviously it has value at strategic levels as well. And one of the things that we're really determined to do is to actually move forward that access to data. So you will all have, I am sure, the HESA app on your iPhone. And the people who really appreciate it, interestingly, are the vice-chancellors and principals. Nothing like being asked how many students you've got to be able to have the answer immediately. So there's a sort of value in us trying to work really hard with getting that data out there. And we're looking seriously at, obviously, open data, at improving the interactivity of the data we make available on our website, mobile, and Aidan Simon can tell you more. I've told you their names now. So one of the key features of the work that we're doing is actually around, sorry, Heidi. And obviously we would have named it after you, but actually we didn't. But it's lovely. So Heidi and the future. We're working with JISC. I can see JISC somewhere in the room. And we're actually starting to build a next generation Heidi. And all of you who subscribe to HESA have access to Heidi. And what we're putting in place is going to be a real up the game for you internally to be able to access data. And that's data across the whole of the higher education institutional range and all our collections, and we also put in other data, so it's aggregated data from other organisations such as UCISA, etc. And this tool and this mechanism for you to be able to actually build your dashboards and improve visualisation will be emerging in the next sort of 12-18 months. And one of the features of that is that we are underpinning it with a BI system, and some of you will already be aware, I'm sure, that the current HEDIIP system, there is an API. You can take it and build it into your BI systems, but this will actually be a sophisticated tool that will be available, and it will be available across your institution if you choose to make it so. And we're disappointed in a way that some institutions at the moment restrict access. So I've been encouraging you to make sure in your institution that it gets out there. And what we are able to do is to provide a license for Tableau with that data. So that will be emerging as well. So some of you are already Tableau users. If you're not, I mean, obviously you can interface with other tools through the API and downloading and etc. But it will actually mean that a lot of smaller institutions, particularly that don't necessarily have this capability, will be able to take forward that. And if you put all those together, so this is my finale, if you put all those together, what have we got to look forward to? Okay, I thought this looked quite attractive, but those sort of slightly dodgy things up in the sky, the dubious ones, that's where I'm going to say there is risk in this, because actually what we're heading out with you to achieve is some really serious change management across your systems, across the way that people work in your institutions, for HESA and the way that we manage our collection process and indeed our technology. So those options in the business plan include technology options. And if we don't do it, actually we're in the wrong age and evolution, and it's not going to happen. So this is really a sense of sort of saying to you, we're going to have to work together with this change, and we will be putting together in our business plan the support and training and conversations and consultation and discussions that we need with all of you to ensure that we can take it forward, and more importantly ensure that it's a success, and actually that the benefits that we do identify with you are actually achieved. And I know it's a very common quest, so I know I'm talking to people who will understand exactly what I'm saying. So thank you very much for listening. That's been great. Thanks, Alison. We've got time for some questions. Oh, and while you think of them, I've just got to tell you an anecdote. So you know the reference to the family dinner, Facebook and the family dinner, it's worse. Because when I was on the UCISA exec, this thing called Facebook, shows how old I am, this thing called Facebook emerged, and we all said to each other, this thing called Facebook, we better understand it, we better all join and be friends. So I've got this wonderful group of friends who are of the era of a particular executive of UCISA from about, God knows when it was. When do you think it was? I'm looking at Chris because we know that we're the original friends. so that's my family. A group of UCISA directors of IT from about, whatever it was, 2000 something. Anyway, any questions? Still stunned. Oh, Simon. Nice to see you. By the way, I'm just going to say something else while the mic goes out. It's so good to be back, because it's a few years, but what's really good is it's so much more colourful. It's not just the chairs. And you know what I mean when I say that? It's not grey, it's colour. Thank you. Right, Simon, a bit grey, but your tie's fine. So,
thank you very
and
much.
the shirt.
I think the message of one way to be efficient and effective sits well with all the people in this room. It's something we all struggle with within our own institutions. But I was wondering how the challenges of the different home nations and different agendas plays across one way of doing this. So Scotland is different to England, believe it or not, and there are problems, I assure, with that kind of issue.
Yes. It's genuinely where I say thank you for that question, because one of my margin notes that I obviously failed to build in the time was UK-wide. And I think it would be fair to say that we, and by that I hope I'm meaning we in the room and we HESA, are really convinced that we need to keep this UK-wide, this data sharing, data collection, data standards UK-wide, and really working hard to try and achieve that. You will understand, therefore, that part of the business case has to be built to appeal UK-wide. And we are in conversation with the Scottish Funding Council, with the Welsh Funding Council, with Northern Ireland, as well as HESA, to actually be as persuasive as we can about this. Partly because we would like to see investment in it, so that we can actually make sure we can tailor it to Scotland and Wales and England, and because the way in which we can do it is, what we're trying to achieve is a core student record that has to be common. Easy to say, I know, but has to be common across most of the organisations that are interested in higher education. But then we can build around it, and we do it already, so we can build modules that actually pull in what is necessary for Scotland, what is necessary for Wales that is different. And one of the things that particularly we're trying to achieve is also that sense of leadership from those funding councils, who are then prepared to drop some of the collections that they make in year. And that sort of started out as a bit, you mean us, but now it's really moving on. And I think, seriously, you know, in the case of Scotland, you'll know which they are, the sort of early year. You know, if we can achieve this, then we'll be able to pull that through as well, and that's really encouraging. And I think the other thing that's really interesting to us, UK-wide, but it's also HE wherever it's found. So with some of the other conversations, certainly with Scotland, are looking at HE and FE. I mean, it's not necessary that we have to collect all that data, but we certainly need to link it and pull it together. And so that's one of the things that we'll be looking at in the case of Scotland. But yes, it's important. And we have a lot of dialogue. We have good relationships with you know, the funding councils, the government, Scottish government. They need our data too, which is good. And you need it to be able to see yourselves in a UK-wide dimension, which makes it international, in fact.
Any other questions?
I take silence as you're up for it. Because you're not saying you're not. So let's end there, shall we? Thank you very much.